Hello, welcome back to Seaport Vault. I know our surroundings look a little different than the last episode, but today we are in the Admiral's cabin aboard cruiser Olympia. Today, in honor of the 2023 Phillies season home opener, we are talking about pastimes aboard cruiser Olympia. Let's get started. Actually caught it. Wow, and this is definitely not the third base ball, and none of them went in the water at all. Definitely not. America's favorite pastime was alive and well aboard Olympia. They had both formal and informal baseball teams on board, and it was a way to kind of condition bodies, pass the time, keep morale up. There were both formal and informal games of baseball on board, and Olympia did have a team complete with uniforms that actually evolved over time. There are some pictures of that in our archive in the museum. This is the 1895 to 96 baseball team for Olympia. And you can notice with this uniform, they have an anchor with wings as their sort of logo, if you will. There's some baseball gloves on the laps of the baseball players. These uniforms are definitely a lot different than what we see today. You can actually see with their boots that they're wearing their Navy-issued boots while they played. They didn't have special cleats or sneakers to play in, but it is pretty interesting that they did take the time to have uniforms with it, and they weren't just playing in their regulation uniforms. So with this image, we see that the uniforms have transitioned to be more similar to what we know today. There's the team name written across the chest in that typical button-up style shirt. In this case, it does say Olympia as the team, so it's guaranteed that this is Olympia. And we also have in the middle our little mascot. We do not know the name of this dog, however, he was aboard Olympia or potentially in Splato, Austria, which is where this photo was taken. And this was a picture postcard that was previously a part of a scrapbook. So it has since been taken out of the scrapbook, but that's something that they would have done when coming home from being away as an enlisted man. Boxing was another sport played aboard cruiser Olympia. They would usually set up a boxing ring up here on the top deck, which is where we're at right now, and they would just box with each other. It was another sport that was very popular in America, and it found its way with the sailors out to the high seas. Mascots are a major part of sports, and my favorite happens to be the Fanatic, of course. But on Olympia, mascots were also known as pets. So on board Olympia, we had a lot of cats that were not just for micing and boosting morale, but they were also for cuddling, of course. There was also a dog named Bob aboard, and his fur father was Admiral George Dewey himself. There were also some pictures that we have in our archive of goats on board Olympia. I don't know why there were goats, maybe for milk, maybe just for fun. And if you're like me and sports just quite aren't your thing and you don't know the difference between a touchdown and an inning, well, there were other options for you aboard Olympia to pass the time. Did you know Olympia had a library? While on board, sailors could check out books and read them while they were out at the high seas. They also published something called the Bounding Billow, which was essentially a newsletter that even had comics in it. Now let's head downstairs to look at some ditty boxes and talk about other pastimes aboard Olympia. Another way for sailors to pass the time and kind of keep track of their journey as an enlisted man would be to scrapbook or write letters home or collect souvenirs. We have a lot of examples of scrapbooks in our archival collection that the sailors made themselves. A lot of times while out at sea and even at port, enlisted men and officers alike would have a diary. So this is the diary of Norman Pavey that we have in our collection. See here, it's nicely bound and still in really good condition. He started this on Saturday, February 4th, and unfortunately, I do not know the year of this, And it's just very basic notes about where they were at, what they were doing, how many boats were out at sea that day. So here we have Monday, April 10th, Tuesday, April 11th, Wednesday, April 12th, Thursday, April 13th, Friday, April 14th, Saturday, April 15th, and Sunday, April 16th. So this book is about 1.5 of my hands, so it will fit with some wiggle room into the ditty box. So by comparison, this book is a lot bigger, you can see it's several hands, than the journal that we just looked at. So this absolutely beautiful book would not have fit into a ditty box, but the items inside of this scrapbook would have been collected on the voyage and then put into the book when they got home. This scrapbook belonged to William Kuntz. He was on board Olympia from 1918 to 1921. In that era, Olympia was at Split, which is around present-day Austria. So this is the port of Splato right over here. That's where Olympia would have been docked at. And the contents of this scrapbook is primarily postcards. So these are all things that could have been collected at port and then placed into the ditty box. There's a good mixture of colorized photos or just kind of hand-filled in postcards and black and white ones. And we really get a sense of what Split looked like while the crew members of Olympia were there. So these were potentially picture postcards that were made by fellow crew members. A lot of times people who were aboard took pictures to basically sell to their fellow crew members or just for themselves. And you're probably wondering what this box is in front of me. Well, that is a ditty box. And a ditty box is essentially your only space to keep your personal items as an enlisted man. Your clothing, your food, everything like that will be kept elsewhere, but this is where you keep all of your letters from home, your souvenirs from the various ports that you'd be visiting, and then any mementos of home that you'd want to keep with you. And what would you put in your ditty box? I would put a picture of my cat, Binks, because he is my best friend. A diary to keep track of everything that I did as an enlisted sailor. And a cheese stick, because that's my favorite snack. Maybe a few more for good measure. So this isn't a whole lot of space. And to be honest, I've had purses that are bigger than this ditty box. It's probably about the size of a large shoebox, and I would say it's about maybe 12 inches by 8 inches or so, so it's really not a whole lot of space. But again, as a sailor, you didn't need that much space other than your letters and your souvenirs. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed learning more about the pastimes aboard cruiser Olympia. Hope you join us next time as we uncover more from the Seaport Vault. Go Phillies!